Hello everybody, we're back discussing Spring Summer 18 with Mimma, Viglezio and
Stephen Jones.
So this time I'll let you say. And hi Stephen.
Hi.
And specifically this time we're going to discuss London, and we would like to start by talking about Christopher Kane. Mm-hmm. Christopher Kane has been like the enfant prodige of London for a few seasons, and he still certainly is, but people were more talking about others, so we thought that it was time to bring back the talented Mr. Kane.
Mm-hmm. Well, designers do what they do, but every season, of course, there's new people who come along to show, who are new and younger, and the great thing is in London, they are acknowledged, whereas in other cities they're not acknowledged, and there's certain designers who maybe stop showing or going through financial troubles and I mean, so many are in that situation, or are doing different things, or films, or whatever. Like Gareth did a wonderful film here with Nick Knight at Show Studio. Yeah. So Christopher's sort of star has been moving, and actually,
why so?
I think because fashion's always in flux. It's all when you think that somebody's there at a particular position, then it changes. I mean, there's nothing which is permanent. You know, you're only as good as your last 6 months. Of course, you have a reputation, but when the editors and the buyers sit down and look at what you're doing, you're starting, in a way, from a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, but what I love about Christopher Kane is that he's very consistent in doing his own thing, and he's one of the
great... Yes, but his audience isn't.
No, I know.
And their point of view changes.
They cannot deny that Christopher doesn't try to be, you know, the hip brands of the moment. He still does his own thing. He doesn't try to be Vetements or Gucci, even if Vetements and Gucci sell probably more than he does at the moment. He doesn't want to be, you know, and he's very inconsistent in having very elaborate ideas. We're going to talk about this one in a second. Very elaborate point of departures for his idea, and making these ideas into clothes, you know, like then suddenly you've got very weird shoes, like we're going to describe this one in a second. But this one started from, as he said, I was always a little bit of a pervert. And this one started from wanting to contrast prettiness and normalcy with darkness and dirty, so clean and dirty, as he said. And so it took inspiration from, I mean, for the young audience, it will be totally obscure, but I mean, for people like us, in the 80s, it was a famous case of Cynthia Payne, who was a famous madame, so owner of a brothel.
She had a brothel, yeah.
Madame in the sense of owner of a brothel in South London, and apparently she was looking very clean and pretty and a little bit bourgeois, and then she was, you know, exploiting hookers, and the brothel was frequented by the MPs, the policemen, and so it became like this big London scandal.
And she saw it that she was providing a social service.
Exactly.
In a very different point of view. She even famously took luncheon vouchers, which are these
things... I didn't know that.
Yeah, these things that you get from your employer to pay for your lunch, and she would accept those as payment. I mean, it was extraordinary. And a big sort of social... I mean, I remember at the time, it was a big change in perception of how things are seen, and there was a great film made of it as well. And I know Christopher loved her as a figure because she was very proper, dressed very chicly.
And that's why he said the contrast between clean and dirty. So the whole show had hints to, you know, like garbage bags or kitchen rugs, or, you know, there was
I love these earrings too, sorry, I have to move, which were made out of mops.
They're made out of mops,
and the shoes.
And the shoes have this, we see fringes here, but actually they look like, you know, mops.
Yeah, and there's the most fantastic dress fairly far on in the show, which is all made out of yellow dusters. So the cleaning element was quite strong within the show. And of course there was things made out of what I think was black patent, but looked like black garbage bags.
And the washing up rugs that become that almost weird knit where we just saw a dress. But what's interesting here is that he manages to be quite literal with his, inspiration, but turn it into desirable clothes.
Yeah.
And they're wearable.
I mean, for example, this pale pink one on the left now, that's made from this funny knit that sponges in it, like bathroom sponges are made from.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, with a little bit of glitter in it. But I think that's a really good point, how he will be literal about his inspiration, so it looks strong, it'll be the engine to make something new and different, but still make wearable clothes out of it.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's that point which is the challenge, one of the big challenges for today's designers in particular, because if it's too much the literal the initial interpretation, it's too literal, and it looks like costume. And then if it goes too much about the practical clothing, it just looks
He's
like
the best at doing
Marks and
this.
Spencer's.
But also, what I think it's interesting, and if we can go on with the show, is that the passage between clean, which is literally kitchen tools, to dirty becomes actually, it goes into the territory of sexy. And so we've got, that's
genius.
garbage bag.
But for me, and I forgot to mention also as well, and they had clothes pegs in silver on the tops of their clothes. But this is so genius. This was my favourite piece in the entire show.
Which one?
Which was a T-shirt, the one on the left, one with a check skirt. It was a T-shirt printed with the front of a front-loading washing machine, and it had little flowers embroidered on the front, and then a handkerchief coming out at the front of the washing machine. I mean, I know in a funny way it's dumb, but I think it's so sweet and charming. And I think there's also, it's somehow what Christopher does, that no matter how challenging something might be, there's always a sense of fun or prettiness. Or I know, for example, Raf at Calvin Klein and Christopher are good friends, and they really...
Are they?
Yeah. And they really understand each other's work. But whereas Raf will always take the slightly bitter route, the slightly sour route, Christopher will normally take the sweeter route. But so much of what they do is like...
I think Christopher is very much tongue-in-cheek, but then at the same time, it's very clear, because if we continue the show, he goes into his lace and sexy silks, and then he printed John Cassare
fantastic photorealist paintings
on dresses.
Yeah.
And signed them Cassare. So
but still
it's very
sweet.
literal, but in a funny way.
But still, those are sweet. There's a certain sort of charm. You know, it isn't somebody like slashing their wrists or something. It's a picture of
it's a beautiful woman bun.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful one. It's not offensive. It's not vulgar. It's very.
It's an idealized.
Would I go around with a
like
dress?
Richard Hamilton? You know, it's an idealized.
Not sure I would wear a woman bum on my chest, but.
First time for everything.
Some people probably will do. But anyway, so I think I don't know if you agree with me, but I do think that Christopher Kane is a great designer. My only problem with him is that is this art, is this experiences, or is this, real clothes? Because then I'm not sure his clothes are really commercial. We were saying they're wearable, and they are.
I mean, there are clothes within this collection.
Conceptual in a way,
There's clothes within this collection, certainly the earlier clothes in the collection, which absolutely are commercial. So if we go back right to the beginning, there's very commercial clothes within there, but then he does things which are more fantasy as well. So it's a normal balance, yes. Yeah. I mean, every designer does some things which are, for the camera or pushing their idea. And then there's things to sell. You have to have the meat and the potatoes.
Yeah, which is a very good way to go into Hussein Chalayan territory. Yeah. Hussein, who is...
This pink blouse in the centre was so
Sorry, guys, can you go
divine.
back quickly to Christopher?
That pink blouse in the centre was so beautifully done, because it was like little rags, or squares of fabric, but so prettily, and I've never seen anything cut like that before. The only person really I know who could cut creatively like that, in a very fluid fabric like crepe de chine, is Karl Lagerfeld at his greatest moments in Chanel. And I think that's really, I know it's just something that's...
I would never have made that comparison, but I'm interested.
But you know, when Karl is the most clever of designers in working with soft and delicate fabrics, really nobody can touch him, just because he has that training and that experience and those people who can make those sorts of clothes, which are some of the most difficult clothes to make. But Christopher can do it. And it's funny because there's a black coat in black plastic with a white rounded Peter Pan collar.
Toward the beginning,
yeah. Which was, it's so funny because in a way it's a little bit Simone Rocha. It's so the proportions she plays with.
You say that, yeah.
And there's obviously there's a delicacy to her work and there's a delicacy to his work too. I mean, they're similar ages, and it's great that they're both from London, but they're sort of different facets of the same coin somehow.
Yeah, this has the materials and some look about Simone, but a different cut.
Oh, yeah.
A different cut, but it's true what you say. You know, you can see there's the same cultural environment in the back.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a Christopher Kane client, occasionally I might buy Simone Rocha. Yeah,
I mean, I love them both. But I want to say another thing before moving on, is that Christopher, as we know, was bought by LVMH, Kering.
Kering, not LVMH.
No, absolutely not. By Kering. And so now he has access to the Novara factories, I mean, where they produce most of the clothes of the Gucci group, well, now called Kering, former Gucci group. And so I guess that he can give even more, he can exploit his creativity even more, because now the sky is the limit, as far as fabrics or, techniques, and he has access to the best makers.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen it in his recent collection. I don't know how well he goes on with the Kering people. We're not entering that territory, but I can see that you can see when people like J.W. Anderson said about LVMH, I have access to so much more than I didn't before, because there's financial means and technical means, right?
Yeah. I think with Christopher, as with any designer who've been owned by a big group, the trick is to keep your creativity and your independence, and the fact that some of these things might have been made by his atelier in London, and also some of them being made in a big factory who obviously can make the tailoring and the more classic garments better. So I think that's all working, and he has a great design studio. The big thing for him now is the marketing of his company. And that's the next challenge.
So the big thing he has to solve, you think, or he has to increase?
I don't think he has to solve it, because the marketing actually will come from Kering Group, and how to sustain and expand to a wider audience what he's already doing.
Yeah, that could have a whole head-to-head in its own, and I would have some things to say, having been in that company for many years. I think is not as much known as it should be.
Exactly.
But I also think there's some of it that it's his choice, and I think I'm just making it up. Nobody told me, but I also think that there are some brands that are not made to be overexposed. If you're a niche brand like Christopher Kane, where whoever buys you, unless there is the new trendy sweatshirt that you did and everybody wants it, but whoever buys that jacket that we see on the left, I don't know if we're showing it right now, needs to be someone who gets fashion, needs to be someone who's interested in having a fashion statement. And so you don't need to be mass exposed, but you need to be known enough to survive, to be sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, it took Azzedine, who's an independent, and this sort of situation, I mean, it's a very specific thing, but he's owned by Richemont, very big group. It took him 35 years to get to that correct position, whereas he's still an independent and still known.
And does what he wants.
And does what he
wants.
Shows
what he wants. But let's hope that someone does that to Hussein Chalayan, to go back to
absolutely.
A person who I think not only is a lovely person, but is one of the best designers ever, who is been around for 20 years as well, and struggling not as far as fashion is concerned, but commercially, because he's independent and, you know, underrated. And he did probably one of the best shows of the season. He, you know, gave us probably one of the best tailoring of the season.
I mean, look at the cut on this.
Seems so simple, and yet they're so constructed, and they turn around and they move in a different way. The front and the back, they are incredible.
And so elegant.
And so chic,
and modern. And I have to say, on the previous ones, there's just those black chiffon scarves over the face with sunglasses underneath is the chicest hat of the season.
It's probably worth saying this because I was very touched by his notes. Usually when I go to a show and I read show notes, I have chills of anger because they don't mean anything. And he wrote, and I'm going to take out a little card and quote because it's worth it. He wrote a longer one, but it was all about FOMO and the fear of missing out of the young people that are so overconnected. And he says, the feeling of missing out from the exchange of digital information and the like culture is creating an increased sense of despair among many of us. So he was very somber at the beginning, you know, there was this gray and this black and some white and these women with covered face. It's like, I'm not Instagrammable. These are not done to look good on an Instagram shot. And also we were at Sadler's Wells, which is where he started. And so we were sitting like in a theater audience and they were coming out towards us and doing a sort of a triangle walk.
I believe there is a little film of this too, which we could illustrate what you're talking about.
Amazing. And, you know, and the way they were walking in the music, as Hussein usually, it's a little bit of a, you know, of a spectacle, of a real show. And then at the end, they were coming out with a frame, which could have been, you know, a phone frame, but it wasn't that literal. It was a hint to it.
Yeah, it's like the square frame of Instagram, so you're perfectly framed for that moment.
Exactly, but the clothes, I mean, and the clothes in all of this. That's what I love about Hussein, that he put up shows, he's very conceptual, he's an artist, as we know, but then when you go and look at the clothes, you try the clothes, because you have to wear the clothes to realize how good they are. Then they're fantastic, and yet in the audience there's the best press, all the most important critics, probably 3 buyers.
Yeah.
So
what's going on?
Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, just a little thing about the press. When Anna Wintour received her Outstanding Achievement Award at the British Fashion Awards a few years ago, she got up on stage and John Galliano had given her the award. And it was so fascinating because in her acceptance speech, she didn't talk about John so much, but who she talked about was Hussein. And she said that Hussein was the first person she really understood who made art and clothes and joined that thing together and was absolutely passionate about it, and how in a way he convinced her to continue and expand the fashion business. And she was saying what a huge influence Hussein and his devotion to his clothes had been on her. It was extraordinary. I worked with Hussein once for a wonderful collection, and like many other designers, you know, he absolutely believes in it. It is his life. Why hasn't it gone as planned, or why hasn't it been as successful in financial terms as it should have been? Because the clothes are, I mean, these with post-it notes,
there's something
genius,
a little bit,
absolute.
But there's something
genius.
a little bit difficult in his conceptuality.
Of course he's difficult. He's difficult in the way that Azzedine is difficult.
But the other day he gave a TED talk in Vancouver 2 years ago, I think. And I watched it carefully. So Hussein was a little bit nervous because his job is not to be on a stage and recite a talk by heart. But what he did was right enough showing his most important shows that were also piece of art. And even the TED audience, which is very clever, those are very, smart people, not fashion oriented. So maybe they were like, why a fashion designer? didn't react as much as I was expecting. You know, there was silence. In the end, they gave him a standing ovation because he managed to wake them up with that incredible show that he did in, I think, winter 2000, where he transformed
with the tables.
The cloth became clothes, and then the tables became bags, and everybody could leave with the whole set. And it was about, you know, he was speaking about his family that had to leave Cyprus and migrate. It was about living with your own house. And then the last model became, the dress was in wood and was the table becoming her dress. So they applauded that. But even the TED Talk didn't get it, how he manages to, he's an artist, and he manages to marry art and fashion in a very intelligent way, which is so interesting. And then the clothes, and I wear his clothes, are amazing to wear. So what does need to happen for Hussein to be like Hazedine and be seen in Selfridges and Harrods and Bergdorf, and which he is, but not as much, you know.
You know, obviously he needs some big group to come and be his backer. But, you know, would he be the next, when they were trying to pick a new designer for Givenchy or another big label?
He did Vionnet.
Yeah.
You know, he helped that lady, what's her name?
I don't know. But you know,
yes,
are you going to choose a commercial designer who has got art as well, or are you going to choose Hussein, who you know will be difficult and what? So I don't
know.
He's
in his 50s, so he's difficult to manage.
I don't know. I don't know if he's in a way he's missed the boat. You know, is he Yazidine? No, in a way. He's more like Charles James, who is this genius, and I just hope that he can continue to produce collections every season, because for a designer, for somebody who's into fashion, he's sort of fairly the ultimate. You know, every year, Andrew Bolton, when he's curating exhibitions at the Met, so often there's something from Hussein in the exhibitions.
At the moment now, it's Fashion Modern. I was just there last week. I knew I couldn't say it. In the dress section, like what is it called? The typical little dress, sleeveless with round neck and like this.
Like an A-line dress, or
sorry. Yeah. Anyway, that dress. There is one by Hussein, and it's probably the one that stands out the most. So he is recognized by people that understand fashion.
It's a bit interesting when you see him and almost the younger person who's doing that, which is Iris van Herpen, and they're in a way doing similar things. The wonderful thing about, and she does something else, but Hussein...
Well, they both use technology a lot in their fashion,
but it
and
is wearable,
materials.
and he has such knowledge of clothing, about how clothing works around a woman's body, as opposed to it being applied decoration.
I think more than Iris van Herpen, who is amazing, but it's more couture, so it's more. Well,
it's more about applied decoration to a body. It's actually not about creating this thing or clothing for people to move in, even though these ladies are standing stationary. You said before, what's extraordinary is to put Hussein's clothes on and see how they feel. I mean, how many people have been able to say that? I mean, Vionnet, Charles James.
Yeah. But Vionnet, he helped the woman who bought Vionnet 3 or 4 years ago, and she's a rich Russian and certainly not a designer. Goga Ashkenazi.
I see, Goga.
Sorry, I can't find my thought. But anyway, and he did one, they were calling it half couture because it's less fitting, fewer fittings.
But it didn't work.
Collection, it didn't work, but now I think he still designs for her.
Well, I hope he's doing some consultancy and charging huge amounts of money for that.
Me too, but this show, one thing that we didn't say, it's a comeback to London. Because Hussein is shown in Paris for the past many, many years, or always. This was at Saddlewares in London, so we're talking about Hussein from London, and I think he had probably the biggest press in a long time because he had less competition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But
I think beautiful. Look at that white shirt with black trousers.
The face frame. Genius.
It is beautiful, and I really hope that it will sell more.
And so funny because we were talking about Christopher Kane, J.W. Anderson, and all of them would be, I'm sure, if you asked them, would consider that Hussein was one of the greatest designers.
With him, I'm sure.
And influenced both of them hugely.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's great to have him back here and showing as well, because it was somehow lost in Paris, even though people did go to it.
People did go to it, but it was lost in Paris.
When you're competing against Dior and Dries and
Chanel
and Balenciaga
rockets
and
flying up in the sky or whatever. But
What else was good in London? Did you see?
That I saw. I mean, I thought JW did a great job as usual. I mean, we now used to say that JW Anderson is a great designer and he puts together great shows for his own brand and for Loewe. I think where he was particularly smart this season is that he pushed the boundaries of creativity as he does, but he made it more and more wearable and sellable, because these guys, they all know that they can do whatever they want, but if nobody wears them, then
there's no point.
What's the point? And I think London this year, the whole of London, if I take it as a whole, was very much that. All these very creative kids who are maturing, not that kids anymore, they're managing to keep the fine line between too creative and not enough fashion, and doing something in the middle that it's so appealing. I absolutely love what Jonathan Anderson did.
And I have to say, in previous seasons, I've been, I not say I wasn't a fan, but, of all the different designers I could really like, J.W. Anderson was not one of them. But this season, somehow, I think it looks really good. I think it has a balance.
Why is that? I'm interested in know what was the problem for you in there?
I didn't really like it.
It was subjective?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the proportions, I didn't like the use of colour, I didn't like the cutting, I didn't like the overall art direction of it, because I felt it was somehow lots of smaller elements, almost of like lots of different people being pulled and edited together, but this looks like a single voice, and it looks so strong because it looks like a single voice.
So you think it didn't? It didn't before?
No,
I
somehow
think it has
for
a
me,
very strong signature, personal.
Somehow
signature.
for me it didn't, but that was in the past and this is now.
I have something to say here, because as much as I like his shows,
that green dress, fantastic,
and I like his collections, I've tried Jonathan Anderson a few times. I don't know if it's my body. It's not that easy to wear. And I was reminded about Nicolas Ghesquière from Balenciaga at the very beginning. It was the most incredible collection and not easy to wear. You need a certain kind of body.
Yeah, and that's also why
I cannot
Maria
bring myself to
Grazia,
actually wear it.
why Maria Grazia at Dior, even though there's been major issues about what she's saying, a lot of editors are saying that they don't like it. That in fact it's selling hugely because the fit is perfect.
Perfect, yeah. I don't know if here it's about a fit or the actual shape of it, but I keep ordering it and sending it back, unfortunately.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's a combination of fabric, fit, maybe proportion to a woman's body.
And yet I can wear Loewe. I can wear what he does for Loewe, which is talk about it in Paris, which is one of my favorite brands of the moment.
Which is probably more controlled, because if you're working with a company like that, they will say, well, our basic block is this, our Spanish client is this shape, our Asian client is that shape, our Scandinavian client is...
European me that works with that.
Well, it's different for everybody. I mean, the world is not homogeneous as far as body shape is concerned.
Luckily, yes.
Yeah, and so
where is this produced? Is it in England?
I think
Jonathan Anderson.
I'm sure a lot is done in Italy if they're knit, and this green dress, for example, looks like a knit dress. I'm sure this is produced in Italy.
I'm sure that's also wearable, even for me, probably.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. It's beautiful and the most gorgeous colour, and I love the fact that it's the same colour, matte and shiny. It looks as though it's been glazed or something.
It's very beautiful. Can we talk quickly, we have some more minutes to go, about Gareth Pugh and the film that he did with our very own Nick Knight.
Brilliant, all red.
That was horrendously fantastic, meaning that I was terrified at the beginning, but it was such an amazing piece of art. And the fact that the press said, amazing film, amazing idea to do it the way he did it, but then what about the clothes? So some people thought that the clothes were always the same, but I think he has a very strong signature, and some people say those are not clothes to be worn. What's your take? What do you think? Did you see the film, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think they're, sure, you're not going to go and run for a bus in one of the ones we saw previously, but if you're buying a Gareth Pugh red outfit,
the suits are spectacular.
Yeah, it's so good. And not to say there's something for everybody, but there are different things. But if you're Bjork, you probably are wearing that red outfit in the centre. And if you're wearing that or you're Katy Perry, you probably are wearing that. Yes. And that's its purpose.
She's more a Jeremy Scott person, but I see what you mean.
But she's not, they're not going to be selling 100 of those. They're going to be making 1 or 2 with a price for 1 or 2. So he is absolutely addressing his design brief just as much as Uniqlo would be addressing a design brief.
That was a statement.
Yeah. But his design brief is different, and he's a great designer.
Why people are saying of Gareth, is there even a new collection, when I think the fact that he has such a strong signature is important, and they're not saying it for Azedin, who I think he's the one who even more does more of the same. Once you have, and it's not diminutive, but once you have an Azedin dress, you can only buy it in a different color, but there's not much difference.
Well, I'm sorry, those people who are saying that have actually got a very basic and very old-fashioned view of what fashion is. They really do have.
I read some good signatures saying that.
Because, yes, but what Gareth does, whether it was 5 years ago now or in 5 years' time, I hope in 5 years' time it will be the same.
Yeah, I think Gareth has one of the best suits in the world.
Nobody else is doing this. He has such a strong handwriting that to judge it by time,
it's right.
Ridiculous.
It's wrong.
Absolutely ridiculous. As much as if you're going for a real fashion label, like, I don't know, what's an absolute fashion label?
What do you mean by real, like fashion?
Real fashion label, like Prada, for example.
Yeah.
Prada changes really a lot every season.
Yeah, but there's always a mutual signature, even there,
Gareth doesn't. He really does what he does. And the reality of the situation is, no, those clothes aren't being sold in 50 department stores in the UK. But I don't think he really wants to do that. And I see his future doing special things for special clients.
But again, we're talking about another great one who,
like
if you said Hussein Chalayan or Gareth Pugh in the street, most people, they're like, is that a medicine? Or they wouldn't know how to spell it. It's not like saying Prada, Gucci and Chanel. And I don't think it's only because of the humongous financial means that make you, of course, more known and top of mind everywhere. It's also because they are doing real fashion, which is closer to art. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder, and that's my wondering, is it clothes or is it art? And that's him again, but what matters most, does it matter? Does it even matter? And of course, you and I are here discussing fashion for an audience who is interested in fashion. So they're not interested in knowing, if red is the color of next season. It is a hard one. When I discuss with my friends who are not in the industry, they ask me, who cares? Why? So is it for us, professional, or for collectors only?
Well, no, it's not for them, because, fashion over the past 30 or 40 years has tried to become democratic, and because of social media, it's more and more democratic. Yeah. But some things are not democratic, and some things are exclusive. And that's what people pay for, is exclusivity. For example, within the world of haute couture, yes, you have the thing, but if a star or celebrity has worn that dress, the client would never order that.
Never touch it, yeah.
Because what would you want? To have something that somebody else has had? You're not going to pay money for that.
And yet the celebrity will enhance the brands and make all the aspiring
and that's
people
when you
buy
can
the
sell a
bag.
load of perfume or lipstick or a T-shirt with,
Bags,
you know.
and shoes, yeah.
I mean, fashion is not for everybody. And, you know, this is one of the sort of conceits of the fashion business, that how do normal people who maybe don't know about fashion judge fashion? I mean, they can't. They don't have the experience.
Weirdly,
in the same way that we couldn't be a nuclear physicist or something. You know, why would we know about that? That's a different area. Of course, as you know, we're in a way fashion experts, and we do that, and we're into that for a small group of people who appreciate that sort of thing.
Yeah, but there is a bigger narrative because everybody's wearing clothes, and so fashion is, you know, it's also clothes. While, you know, physicists...
Fashion is composed of clothes, but actually there is clothing and there is fashion.
I couldn't agree more.
And when you're talking to your friends, you can say, well, you're wearing clothing, and you hope that it's fashionable, but we're talking about fashion with a capital F maybe, or fashion and art crossover. Maybe we should try and think of a new word for it. That would solve a lot of problems.
Well, no, I'm trying to think about Hussein and look, you know, and now we're seeing the dance of Gareth Pugh, but I mean Hussein again and Gareth and these amazing designers who have, you know, pushed forward also the style, because then even clothes are influenced, because what this guy, or John at the time, you know, John 15 years ago, if he put fishnets on a catwalk, then everybody was wearing it in the high street. So it does influence clothes.
Yeah.
But then, you know, the Gareth and the Hussein of the world keep probably, I don't know, maybe guys I'm saying something wrong, but I'm not sure they sleep tight every night about the financial situation of their company.
Oh God, no, they don't. But I don't think Ralph Lauren does, and I don't think Dior does. I mean, it's all on quicksand.
Yeah, but in a different way. They can, you know, fire 1,000 people and suddenly they make money again.
And I'm sure they're wondering about, you know, Hussein is wondering, can he make payroll this week?
Yeah, that's
the reality of it.
And we don't know the struggle that goes behind the scene, but then when these people, and you know, a few of the designers I know personally, when then you talk to them, they are tired and they are a little bit bitter and they are a little bit upset because they're like, can you guys stop telling me how great I am where I barely can pay the rent of my studio, you know?
Yeah.
So this is not very funny to stop with because it's too sad.
That's the fashion business.
So what about London? What was London for you this season? I mean, I was quite enthusiastic about London this season because I thought, again, you know, it was still London, very creative and very dairy. I had this beautiful experience with Molly Goddard again, who was joyful.
Genius, yeah.
And, you know, notwithstanding the PETA people aggressing us, it was quite scary how they were yelling at us in front of the shows. And
Molly, who does not use fur, and by the way, it's a summer season.
They were especially fierce in front of Gareth. We had to go in from the back. Burberry. So they went.
I was at the Burberry show too. That was, and I walked in with Naomi and Kate when they were getting a really.
And you also walked in with the most visible people in London, probably. So
yeah, but it was walking the gangplank for everybody.
It was fierce. And in front of the venue, 180 Strand, and that was before Molly. But I think that was more the venue. It was more the beginning of Fashion Week. And it was fierce. It was scary.
Yeah, I mean, that was, and to be practical about it, that was the weekend, but on the Monday it didn't happen. On the Friday it didn't happen because everybody was at work. So...
Wasn't Burberry on Monday? No, it was on Sunday.
It was on Sunday evening, which was a great, I have to say, it was a great show. I was at that show and it was wonderful to see how it was a show somehow which didn't look as though it was trying too hard. It looked quite relaxed. It looked like a show made out of separates, which then had been styled together. For me, it's a bit confusing about showing a summer collection and a winter collection and girls and boys in the same show. But what it does, I mean, I guess it's the that sort of fashion feeling. When you go into somebody's store, you get that overall Burberry feeling as opposed to this is this season.
Yeah, maybe. A little bit. Yeah, a little bit what's going to happen more and more in the
I'm sure.
brand of the moment. I think Christopher had a big pressure on him because it was the first show after he could be relieved of his duties as CEO. So now he's going back being a fashion designer and not having to manage the finance of a 6 billion,
must have been the most horrendous and crazy.
Which was the wrongest thing to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I said at the time and I maintain it. He's got one of the best CEOs in the industry. I mean, the guy did such a good job with Celine and Givenchy. What's his name? Marco Gobbetti. He's very, very good. And let's see, you know, so everybody had a lot of expectation on it. You know, he changed the venue, he's changing the style, he changed photography, he changed everything.
Yeah.
It's less
I think
British oriented because he had Kaya Gerber, so she's American.
Yeah,
in the show.
But I think it was a little bit, I don't know, but you know, he did this collection with Gosha Rubczynski.
Yeah.
And I think seeing how somebody else would reinterpret his work.
The Czech.
Yeah.
The Czech especially.
Yeah, and just suddenly made him relax about it somehow.
Would you wear a Burberry check shirt?
I was wearing a Burberry check shirt.
Would you now? Oh, to this
show? Yeah.
Oh, wow. You're brave.
Yeah, I mean, people, but you know,
even designer,
and I wore the matching hat too. If a designer's going to show a look, I'm going to wear it. I'm going to wear it. You know, are you in it?
Yeah, but you're
are you
not
out?
the right example because you know you're not the you know the typical Englishman in the street. I mean, we didn't talk about your hat this time.
Oh, this is a very simple one.
Yeah.
This is actually from Japan. This is a knitted beret.
From Japan, meaning it's made in Japan?
It's made in Japan it's cotton, actually, mid-season.
It reminds me of the pattern of, you know, the sea urchin when they're in their shell. Is it a bad thing I'm saying?
No, I think
love
that's
it
wonderful.
because it has that
I love the fact that you're seeing that.
So you thought about that?
No.
Okay,
I just liked the fact that it was white.
Yeah.
Because if you're a man and wearing a hat, often the fact that it's in a colour which is not black, navy or chocolate brown is enough of a statement within itself. So anyway, this is today's hat.
Yeah, we couldn't end this head-to-head without mentioning your hat. So see you next time and we will talk about Milan.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.